Good evening. It is Monday evening. That means it's time for the Anglo-Italian pod Monday night Euro review show. As always, my name is Rory, and I'm joined by my very good friends. We're going to start with, I think is pointing the right way,
Adam and
Ben. How's everybody doing?
All good, man. How are you? Good weekend?
Great weekend, mate. It's always good when you. That's the great thing about playing on a Friday is that if you win, it just sets up the weekend nicely, so it can't ruin it. Yeah, it was good, and got to sit back and watch some of the football kind of without that extra added level of stress, which was nice.
That's it. The second you got the win, you can just watch, like you can hate watch the whole weekend. You're just like, well, we won, so no matter what happens, I'm pretty happy.
Exactly, yeah. Just feet up for the rest of the weekend. But yeah, no, it was good. It was good.
Nice. What about yourself, Adam? Decent weekend. Wickham are struggling a bit at the minute. I don't know if you want me to bring it up or not, but I'm going to bring it up.
Well, I'm donning the shirt, right? So I might as well kind of exudes kind of confidence in the team. It was actually a decent result against Derby County. We got a 97th minute penalty. It was kind of a scene from FM. You weren't expecting it, and then play goes down, penalty given, and we slammed it back home to the Pride Park crowd. But apart from that, I'm still trying to shake off this viral infection, whatever the hell it is. And fell flat on my ass twice on the ice rink this weekend. So, yes, never pleasant. The second time was like, I remember pulling a cruise shirt once, and I was like, right, I'm feeling this twinge a bit. I'm going to come off now. Like, I've had my, half an hour was good runnings, and then I've had two in about a space of 5 minutes where I've been on my ass. So, yeah, I think I'm no Casanova on the ice rink, let's put it that way. So,
just calling for the sub.
Yeah, straight away.
Move me on.
Mate, the missus was literally talking about this weekend. Oh, we should go ice skating. I just straight away, nope. I do not want to make a dick of myself in public. I do that enough. I don't need to do it on ice. I'm all right, thank you. We do need to say welcome to our friends on Instagram. For the first time, we are streaming live on Instagram. We're in the 22nd century, guys. We're flying. So we're coming at you from everywhere. We have a lot to talk about this show. We're going to not really be talking about Anfield because there wasn't really much to talk about. So we're going to look elsewhere. We're going to be talking about Man City, Crystal Palace. We'll be talking about West Ham a little bit, Brentford and Villa. Incredible scenes there. Arsenal getting a massive win over Brighton. And then, of course, we'll have to spend a little bit of time at Anfield talking about how disappointed we were there. Adam, I'm going to put you on the spot. What are we talking about in Italy?
In Italy, I suppose we will start off with the late kickoff from last night, which was Lazio and Inter. Inter showing their credentials again as champions. Obviously, we have to remind ourselves of the Friday fixture as well. So Genoa holding off Juventus to a 1-1 draw, which means Juve have actually dropped some points for once, which is delightful. We'll also talk about Bologna and that continuous climb up the table. They now find themselves solidly in 4th place thanks to a 2-0 win over Roma. And there's certain circumstances around Renato Sanchez we have to talk about. So we'll talk about that as well. And Fiorentina, they still win games, even though they're shit. So we'll probably remind ourselves about that as well. But yeah, that was the highlights in Serie A.
Nice. And if we do have time, we might have to find it. We will talk about the UCL draw. The Champions League draw was made today and talk about which ties we're looking forward to there. Diego Simeone returning to the San Siro is going to be absolutely beautiful, I think. But let's start in the Premier League and should we just get it out of the way because it was terrible? Let's start with Liverpool 0, Manchester United 0. I think we were talking about it on the group chat last night, Adam, and you summed it up pretty perfectly with, is this just a case of who has been the worst team? I'm going to say the worst team was Liverpool because I think they were, and I think Roy Keane nailed it. I think they were arrogant coming into the game. I think every chance I saw, it looked like they felt, oh, there'll be another chance. There'll be another chance. Don't worry. We'll get another chance. And then all of a sudden it's the 87th minute and you might not get another chance. And they've realized they've just wasted the entire game. But Ben, I'm going to go to you first. Which side do you think was worse and why?
Oh, 100%. I think you're completely right. I think Liverpool came into the game with that level of expectation that they were just going to kind of wipe the floor with Man United. And United defended pretty well, and they do deserve credit for that. But you just felt as if Liverpool, if they upped it by 10, 20%, they would have won that game quite comfortably. I thought many of kind of their star attacking players especially did not fire. I thought Salah had a really, really poor game. I thought it looked even worse when they kind of went to almost a weird 4-4-2 shape in the second half, where it was him and Nunes up front. Nunes was completely off it again. That's 10 games now without a goal, which, I mean, like, he obviously does bring more than that. And I quite like Darwin Nunes, but he just offered absolutely nothing. I thought Diaz was pretty quiet, although he was probably the better of the three in the first half. Trent, I thought, was pretty sloppy, but grew into the game and was probably going to be the one in the second half that was going to have something to do with it if they did kind of turn the screw and get the win. But Liverpool have got to look at themselves, and it was almost just like I was quite disappointed a bit with Van Dijk's interview after the game, because it was almost just obvious kind of deflection tactics from their poor performance, especially at Anfield. It just felt, Gary Neville mentioned it a few times in commentary about how flat the atmosphere was. Bear in mind, Liverpool had an extra 7,000 fans in their usually have with the new stand. And, you know, I've kind of been banging the drum for a long time about the Anfield atmosphere and how overrated it actually is, but that's a whole nother point. The performance was equally as flat. It was just they almost strolled up thinking, yeah, this United side kind of are due a bit of a battering. You know, we've the 7-0 last year kind of fresh in their minds. And even in the first half, like I remember the game last year where Liverpool didn't score the first goal until like the 38th minute or something, that Gakpo goal. And it always felt as if Liverpool, if they got one, then the floodgates would probably open. But United were probably the team that had the better chances. I mean, Konate had that one where if it had fallen to any other player, he probably would have scored.
Yeah.
But, you know, Højlund, Garnacho had a chance as well. There was another one with Højlund where Rashford cut it back and Højlund just completely missed it, which I don't think they actually even showed a replay of. But that was a great chance. I'm still a lot of concern for Man United because they were very toothless, but they went there with a game plan, and you know it paid off. And Liverpool should definitely be the team that I mean, Liverpool naturally would feel the most disappointed, but their performance is not as if, you know, it was one of those ones where if you didn't watch the game, you probably would have expected Onana to kind of pull it out of his arse and have like a worldie and keep it a 0-0. But that wasn't the case at all. He kind of made 2 saves, maybe that one, and even they were both for the cameras. Like the Van Dijk header one that he tipped over the bar, and then there was one in the second half from Salah where he curled it towards the corner. But it was flat, very flat from Liverpool, and I think is a massive cause for concern for them kind of going into the rest of the season. I thought their midfield was dreadful, and that just makes me think like I've kind of labelled Liverpool as title contenders since not maybe the start of the season, but like since maybe September. But that midfield, you think ahead to that Arsenal fixture at the weekend, Declan Rice is probably looking at that thinking, I can probably handle these 3 on my own, to be honest. So I think that's where they massively struggled.
Yeah, I think it says a lot that Man United were able to run through their midfield. When Man U did get the ball and did get breaks, they went through pretty much unopposed, right? It was pretty mad to watch. But one of my pet peeves, honestly, is a footballer or a manager coming out and complaining about how another team played. If it's not like violence, if you know what I mean, if it's they came here to defend and get a point, okay, cool. That's within their rights. That was their game plan. It's your job. To coin a Roy Keane phrase, it's your job to break it down, right? It really annoyed me that Van Dijk interview. I just thought, you can't expect every team to just play how you want to play and you have the points. Of course, Man U are just going to put like 11 behind the ball. But Adam, for Man United, as Ben said, they did defend quite well. I think Varane stood out. He added a lot of experience to that back line, made some decent blocks. Johnny Evans looks like he had a really good game, but he looks like he's tired. But I think collectively they did defend quite well, but they still allowed 30-odd shots on their goal, right? Do you think Man United get credit, or is it just Liverpool's profligacy in front of goal?
I think there's a combination of both, because if you think about the kind of back shot of they had Bayern Munich as well. I think that's, by the way,
guinea
pigs in here. Yes, there's some guinea pigs
invaded by aliens. I didn't know what was going on.
Crazy. I don't know what the fuck is going on here. So yeah,
brilliant.
So my train of thought. Now we'll go back to Man United. For some reason, if you think back to how Bayern Munich the game planned out versus this Liverpool game, I thought they actually did quite well to contain Liverpool to the best, you know, and you didn't see the best of Salah, for example, on that left-hand side. I mean, certainly there's a few times where I was just expecting him to do something different rather than try and take on his man and try and come on the inside. I think like Ben alluded to, they really did kind of struggle to kind of implement something different up the top. But looking at how Man United implemented it, it was just to absorb as much as they could. They did quite well considering the personnel they had available. It was just disappointing on that kind of counter-attack that they kind of didn't find those decisive passing moments. And I think, Højlund, for all his effort, really did struggle to get a foot in this game. Antony, I thought, had one of his better games for Man United. I know this is such a strange thing.
He was dog shit.
Yeah, exactly. And Dalot as well contributed quite a lot in this game as well. So, I'm going to go off mute now because they're clearly winding you guys up.
There's something going on with
and I'm going to try and calm them down.
They might just be mad Man United fans. Maybe they're disagreeing with what I say. I have no idea.
They're going mad at Van Dijk.
Might be sticking up for Antony. At least someone is. No, I thought there was a moment where I think maybe it was it Højlund or Rashford when Antony didn't put the ball across, and you could see the visible.
I think it was Rashford.
You could see the visible frustration on him. Like, Jesus Christ, can you not just do one thing? I think, like, with a winger, and I think Roy Keane basically said the same in the studio, where he was like, if you had a functional winger there, someone who was able to get that end product, United would have put them to the sword, right? Because that Højlund chance, as you said, was the moment there for them to win it.
Yeah, 100%. They I thought it's weird. It's weird one with Antony because I thought defensively he was brilliant. Like he doubled up with Antony really well. With Dalot really well down that side. But it's just his indecisiveness and decision making in the final third that let United down massively. There was that one chance that you mentioned as well that he should have put it across to Rashford. And there was also another break where they had like a 3-on-2 and he tried a pass with the outside of his boot to slip it through to Højlund. And it just went straight to Konate or Van Dijk, who just ran onto it and intercepted it. And it was just like, mate, you're not like... Again, he deserves credit because he did work really hard in the game. And that's something I've been pretty critical of Antony of. And I think he was up for it and he defended pretty well with Dalot. But just the end product in the final third, which is what he was bought for, is just like... was poor. At least he didn't go hiding. I think that's one thing I've been very critical of Man United with this season and a bit last season, but far more so this season. And I think it's maybe partly because Bruno Fernandes wasn't on the pitch, but there wasn't any players that hid in that game, and they all kind of, I think to their credit, they all kind of showed up to be counted for. I thought Garnacho in the first half worked hard. I thought he didn't get much change out of Trent really, but he was putting in the effort. I thought Mainu was a standout again.
Yeah, very good. Yeah.
Right. I mean, you think of the kind of the games that he's been thrusted into at the start of his United career, Everton away, Newcastle away, and Liverpool away. You're probably not going to find three fiercer grounds maybe to go to as a young player and kind of impose yourself on the team. And I thought he did really well there. Luke Shaw, I thought was really good as well. Salah, I thought he had Salah in his pocket in the first half. Really, really good. Luke Shaw's just one of their best players. He has been for years now. Like
he's just very. I feel like he's just quite consistent. You get a certain level of performance from him, and he's experienced now. And it seems like touch wood, his injury concerns are kind of behind him a bit. He's starting to get a little bit more consistent. So I think that's really good to see. But before we move on, we do need to talk about the red card. I was really relieved to see it's not just Arsenal players that get booked twice within 5 seconds. But Adam, do you think it was harsh? I was really confused as to what happened, but I also kind of think Dalot was an idiot.
Yeah, I thought at the time, you're an idiot for trying to give back mouth to any referee, regardless of what's happened, whether you feel it's a right decision or not. You kind of go, oh, for fuck's sake, and just crack on, right? That would be my approach anyway. But clearly, he must have said something to have really got a second yellow, or I don't know if it was a straight red. I don't know if it actually was a straight
I think it was a
red.
second yellow.
It was two yellows for dissent twice. Yeah. So he called him the C word twice or something. I don't know what he did, but it happened. Yeah. There's a really great moment in commentary as well where Gary Neville was like, "What does dissent twice mean?" And Carragher was like, that he did it twice. It was looking brilliant commentary. They were having a great time because the game was terrible. But yeah, Ben, what were your reflections on it? Because it feels like these rules kind of get implemented as and when the refs won. And it was Michael Oliver who did it to Martinelli as well. So is this a rule that he is creating?
I don't know. It is such a weird one. I was more on the side of I thought it was actually quite harsh, but I think the reason I think it's harsh is because of the inconsistency of it rather than anything. Like I think referees kind of came out at the start of the season and kind of had their hit list of things they were going to crack down on and try and stamp out the game, which is completely fair play. And I think dissent is one of those that does really need to be taken seriously when you look at other sports as well. Rugby, for example, like the way that there is the respect for the officials there that there necessarily isn't in football. And I know football's maybe more of a, you kind of trace it back, it's more of a kind of a working man's game and all this kind of stuff. Like I get that there's going to be more kind of ferocity in football, and especially at a game like that, where it is really high stakes. United have kind of held out for such a long time, and the decision was so obviously the wrong way, even though I don't think Oliver probably would have seen it, and obviously the lino's on the other side, so it's just one of them. But I don't think it necessarily warranted that strong a reaction from Dallo, although I thought it was a little bit harsh. But again, I think it's just the inconsistency of it. Like we saw it's not quite the same, but like it's the whole thing about waving a yellow card now is supposed to be a yellow, but you see that every single week players do it. One player will get booked for it and one player doesn't. Like Ryan Yates on Friday night gets a doggy booked in the first half for a 50-50 shoulder-to-shoulder challenge, starts waving the card around. Jared Gillett buckles, gives him the yellow, but nothing for Yates. And it's just that kind of inconsistency with, I know that's not technically dissent, but there are these kind of minor things in football that they're trying to be so big on, but they're missing every other one that actually happens. And I think there was so many other examples from this weekend. I know we'll probably talk about West Ham in a bit, but like, look at like Kufal. Like,
that's insane.
That's
insane.
Yeah. But like the dissent thing is a big issue. And I think it's good that, like I said, I thought it was quite harsh at the time, but I think on reflection, it's probably one of those things that I don't mind it. I've got no problem with it if they're going to, that's the bar now. That's kind of the tolerance level. If that happens again, I want to see another red card for it, because otherwise I think it's pretty pointless doing it, because you see it happen all the time. But yeah, it's pretty naive from Dallo, especially because I thought he was having such a good game. But I think it's because he was like, I do think there's an element of which, like the first one, if you get booked for one, I kind of feel like a yellow card was probably fair. He didn't need to keep going at him. But again, like how many times have you seen that? It was a tricky one, but probably the right thing in the end, I think.
Yeah, I think exactly. It was just it's just a bit naive from him, isn't it? It's just, if you've been booked once, just shut up and take it, if you know what I mean. Yeah. I know it was a United throw-in. It was like Dallo was in the right, but you've still got to just be a bit more disciplined than that. But let's leave that game there, and we're going to stay in Manchester, or with the Manchester teams. City slip again, and Roy is delighted. Now, I don't know if you saw this video clip at the end of Roy Hodgson just smiling as Guardiola fucking loses his shit. I've screenshotted it. It's just a great reaction meme potential in that picture, I think. Absolutely beautiful photo. Now, this is a game. I saw City went 2-0 up, and I was working Saturday. I was busy. Saw City with 2-0 and was like, okay, well, that game's done. Checked my phone at like 8 o'clock at night, and I was like, wait. It finished 2-2. How the hell did that happen? Ben, I'm going to start with you. Man City slip again, but Palace there. Why do City keep letting these leads go? They just can't quite. They've got one win in 6 in the Premier League now.
Yeah, that's crazy, isn't it? And it's one of those things where if it was any other club, you'd kind of be getting the word crisis banded about. But, City, De Bruyne's return is kind of on the horizon, so they've got that to look forward to. But for now, it kind of feels like it's a weird one with that game, because they've had other games this season where they've not, they've either gone in front and not held on to a lead, where they have been quite sloppy maybe, or haven't been that good in the game or good value. Obviously, I didn't watch the full game, but kind of from a picture from the extended highlights and from what people are saying, and if you look at the stats, like, City was so comfortable. They were so comfortable in the game. Went 2-0 up, creating chance after chance. Dean Henderson had a really good game in goal. I've been pretty skeptical of Dean Henderson. I think Sam Johnston's the better keeper. I can't remember. I think Johnston went off injured against Liverpool, didn't he?
Yeah, the last game.
So exactly. he had to come in for that, and he had a really, really good game. But yeah, City just not, this inability to close out games is becoming a problem, and it's not just against top teams either. Like, obviously they've gone to Arsenal and kind of huffed and puffed, and that was a bit of a strange game. Obviously against Tottenham, they kind of threw the lead away. They've gone away and lost at Wolves, which at the time kind of felt a little bit like, although City had full dominance in that game as well, Wolves were sort of on the turn of like, in the aftermath after what Wolves did to a few other teams, that didn't feel like a terrible one for City. But I think this is one, especially at home, where they'll look at that and think that's massive, like huge points dropped as well. And I think for someone like the manner in which it happened as well, because that Mateta goal was basically the first chance that Palace actually had. Although you could say that Palace could have felt very hard done by because Ederson was very lucky to still be on the pitch in the first half, and that could have been a completely different game.
Yeah.
And then to give the penalty away in that kind of manner as well just shows that, like, is it, the word kind of mentality gets banded around way too much in football these days. And I think City have shown that they are the team who have had the best mentality over the last 4 or 5 years in the Premier League to kind of keep going and going again. But it's just really uncharacteristically sloppy from City. And I don't really know. I mean, obviously, they've got a bit of a break now. Club World Cup, they're not back until the 27th. So they've got a bit of a break from the Premier League. So it'll be interesting to see how they come back.
Like, do they need a tournament in Saudi Arabia now? Do they really need that? I feel like this is something that's just going to be a distraction. And like the whole time they're going to be waiting to correct their form in the competition they actually care about, which is the Premier League. And this whole thing might feel... Now, obviously, you can argue about how competitive the games are going to be that they're going to play. I think they're playing the Japanese team. I can't remember who, I apologize, but coming up. But the whole time, they're just going to be thinking about that next Premier League game. But we do have to say, Phil Foden giving away the penalty was incredibly stupid. I think it's the first time he's completed 90 minutes. It feels like the first time in a very long time. Maybe that's why. But Crystal Palace did get back into the game, Adam. It's still 5 games without a win for Palace, so it's still concerning. But do you think this is a type of performance or result that can get a little bit of momentum? Because Mateta is clumsy and chaotic, but when he comes on, he often makes an impact. And with a player like Michael Olise, who was meant to go to City, there's a feeling that do you think this could be a start of them turning it around a bit?
It's hard to say with this Palace side, especially where, if you look at their record this season, they're better away from home. So where they're struggling at the moment is definitely at Selhurst Park at the moment. But I also think ultimately it is that kind of, they haven't really filled the void of Saha, where he was not only kind of a contributor, but he was also a goal threat for Palace, and he contributed the goals in addition to their forward line, whoever it be. So I think they are missing someone that they could potentially go and target. I don't know who that would be, though, because I think there's a lot of speculation still about Olise and where he could potentially go, despite the fact that he did sign that contract with Parish more recently before the start of the season as well. So I just feel like at the moment, this is probably something I foresaw, because based on the fact that their form away from home is much better. And I think what they did was they just played it more directly, exploited City in terms of that clinical aspect, but also the fact that, defensively they are quite shoddy. And I think what they are missing is that Gundogan effect of someone that can just sit in front of that defense. And I know at the moment, they are having question marks around the fitness of Johnny Stones, which I think is pivotal at this stage. I know they've tried to encourage the likes of Akanji to play that role, but I think they're struggling. We mentioned, I think, in our group chat about Ruben Dias and how his kind of form has dipped massively as well. So he's not the solid, reliable centre back. And I think, again, what Foden did was just naive. He just forgot where he was at that very moment, and he shouldn't be really slamming his feet in the way that he did. So unfortunately, it was just a blatant penalty. I think there's a lot of worries at the City camp, and I think Kovacic hasn't worked out for them either. A lot of the concerns at the moment. Speaking to a City friend, he's saying that they feel as a crowd at the Etihad that he's just too slow. He's just not on the same level as the other players. And I think there's a lot of rumours about Paulinho in Fulham potentially being lined up. But it wouldn't surprise me that they go for someone as well in addition to that, because they need someone that is going to be that clinical aspect. What they're still kind of looking forward to is potentially entertaining another bid for Paqueta, and we'll probably go on to his performance later. But I think that could be a solid shout. But one, just to throw in the ring, I think they should try and put all their money into Musiala if they can, try and persuade him from Bayern. I mean, if they couldn't get, Jude, that would be the kind of perfect other option really for me. So lots to work on. But I think, alluding to your point about going now into this tournament, that's going to be used as the opportunity for Kevin De Bruyne to get his fitness ahead of this kind of second half of the season. So despite the fact that they don't really care as a fan base about this tournament, they're just there because they could be another badge on the sleeve, and that's it. Ultimately, it's all about getting that fitness, and Calvin Phillips looks like he's going to be off as well. So yeah, potentially they're just going to play a lot of kids alongside some of the more kind of veteran players. I feel for this tournament, and then we'll see what happens in the second half of the season. But I can imagine Pep is going to try and get a few bodies for the second half of this season.
Well, Man City with a bit of anger is always a scary thing, and I'm not even slightly counting them out at this point because I know they're going to win 26 games in a row and just kill all our dreams. But we're going to leave the game there. Michael Olise just so stone cold with that penalty at the end. I absolutely love the bloke. But we're going to go for. Let's move on to, if I can find the banner. Where did I put it? Aston Villa 2, Brentford 1. Martinez and Mopai. Now, are these, I was thinking about this, these are two players who are intrinsically linked in their lives, right? Because Mopai is the reason that Leno was injured, that got Martinez his start, that won the FA Cup, that got him called into the Argentina team, that made him a World Cup winner, that meant that he had sex with a glove in front of the world stage and now finds himself as one of the best goalkeepers in the Premier League. But Martinez shows no gratefulness towards Mopai. This is my favorite, honestly, watching it on Match Today. I hadn't really heard anything or been on Twitter, so I just wasn't expecting it. And then all of a sudden, Mopai's running into Martinez and Martinez dragging him by the shirt. It's just one of the funniest things I've ever seen. It was so good. But I didn't realize these two teams hated each other this much. Like, Adam, there was a lot of like niggly tackles, a lot of sly digs, a lot of animosity, right?
Yeah, there's quite a bit of it. I don't know where it's necessarily driven from because I don't remember this in the Championship being kind of a feisty game, to be honest. But I think obviously the little element of Ollie Watkins as well played a part in terms of how the rest of the game kind of panned out in terms of yellow cards dishing out and potentially that kind of action with Martinez and Malpe as well, to be fair. And I'm glad that Ollie Watkins came out at the end and actually explains the rationale behind his kind of why he was shushing that particular fan as well. So I think you wouldn't get that from most footballers. I don't think they necessarily would be having the balls to kind of do that interview. So I think that was really, really refreshing. But in terms of the game, it was so exciting. I wish I was there personally because I'm surprised it didn't get kind of bumped up in terms of match of the day as well, because that was the game to watch. It was, again, Villa was so full of like energy as well in terms of the way they went about it, and Brentford just being Brentford at the moment. They're really like down in terms of numbers at the moment, missing Mbeumo now as well. So, you know, I bet they cannot wait for Ivan Toney to turn up in January now. They must be desperate for that to happen. But, you know, it was a great game. It was a great game, and Villa really took to him. And, you know, they've got the performance over the line in the end, because I don't think it was an easy game by all accounts. But, yeah, they managed to scratch out that result. And, yeah, they move on.
No, well, this is it, exactly. And I think it's showing, like, Ben, I'm going to go to you. It's showing, aside from Villa, like, they didn't score until the 77th minute, right? Alex Moreno, who's been incredible for them when he's played. Good to see him fit at the back post to get the header. And then Ollie Watkins late on, of course. But this is showing a lot of, like, fight within the Villa team, right? This isn't like a lucky run they're going on. This isn't just a purple patch. This is a team that are fighting to the end of every game and making sure they get results. Like, we have to talk about them in the title race now. They are second place, 1 point behind Arsenal, on the same points as Liverpool, or third place now, sorry. But 1 point behind Arsenal on top. They are genuine title contenders, and that is a win that you look at and you go, okay, you didn't play well, or you didn't play as well as possible, but you got the win. That's what champions do, right?
Yeah, exactly. And there's a good chance as well they could end next weekend top. I think they play on Friday night against Sheffield United at home, which you expect them to win. And then if you look ahead to Liverpool Arsenal, there's a good chance that could potentially be a draw as well. So that those circumstances would leave Villa top going into Christmas, which would be incredible. For Emery. Yeah. But like you said, like they've showed their team has got like a brilliant balance of quality and grit. When you look at someone like John McGinn, and then maybe you look at someone like Douglas Luiz, who I think those two players kind of exemplify that a lot. Both got so much quality on the ball, but you know, in terms of the way they fight for the team, especially McGinn. But it was a real kind of gritty performance from Villa. They kind of ground it out. You know, they took their moment and seized it when that red card for Ben Mee came, which again, like I'm not 100% sure about. I'm not. I know, like you could probably file Ben Mee in that kind of not that kind of player category, but that doesn't really mean that much. I thought it was a little bit harsh. Maybe I don't know whether that's controversial. But
I thought it was about as Stonewall the Red as I'd seen. I was like,
Really?
I couldn't believe Thomas
Yeah,
Frank was trying to do
I
the
thought it
whole.
was.
I've not seen it. I was like, mate, he comes flying in.
Yeah,
I thought
It
that
studs
was
the showing, yeah.
it probably
I thought it
was.
fairly nailed on.
It probably
Yeah.
was. I don't know whether it's because I'm being kind of blinded by the Ben Mee thing, because I think he's a really good
seems like a
player.
nice bloke. Hey,
Nice
he
guy,
called out the
yeah.
Burnley fans for being racist. I'll always like him.
Exactly, yeah.
I think that was a bad tackle.
Yeah. Maybe it's because Bailey didn't go down. I think
Mhm.
it didn't look as bad as it
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
probably was. I
Yeah,
think,
yeah.
which is probably why. But but after that, kind of Villa kind of seized that opportunity and picked their moment, and they did their best to kind of throw it away at the end as well. That Leon Bailey back pass was something.
Wow.
That was one of the most. That if something sums up the Premier League season so far, it was that. Like that moment. It was crazy. But yeah,
And the follow-up as well, right?
Oh, exactly. And that's kind of where the whole like Martinez and Mope thing started, wasn't it? With that incident as well, which was very funny. And obviously Watkins, again, they've just got these players that just popping up in the big moments. And Watkins, I loved that from him. Like that was brilliant because it's like the way he spoke after the game. It was like, I've got so much respect for Brentford as a club. I think he went over to Thomas Frank at the end of the game something.
Yeah, he did.
And sort of said, look, like it's not about Brentford. It's not about that. It was just that one person was giving me a lot of personal grief. And footballers for all the money that they earn they're still people at the end of the day, and they have every right to reply. And you kind of almost like it looks better. You'd almost rather them do it because they must get. You see the amount of shit they get on like social media to actually be able to do that in person,
just
to score a goal to vindicate. It was so good. And then the reporter on Match of the Day asked one of the stupidest questions I think I've ever heard when he asked him, "Would you do that again?" And he's like, well, what if he gave me the abuse again? He was like, oh, 100%, I'd do it 1,000 times over. And it's just like, well, what did you think he was going to say? But as well, like, for all of Emi Martinez's kind of theatrics, if that's the best way to describe it, you've got a goalkeeper there that has kind of been there and done it, whether it's for Arsenal in the FA Cup and on the bigger stage. Obviously, that World Cup win was a year ago today. And he was a massive, massive part of that for them. And he's one of those people that I'm good friends with a Villa fan, and she sort of said that like he's one of those players where if he plays for your club, you love it. If he played for any other club, you'd absolutely hate him. But I think you kind of got to respect probably the two biggest masters of shithousery in the Premier League going up against each other on yesterday.
This is it. We are seeing new levels of like it's never been seen before. I absolutely love him just for the entertainment value he brings, and like
it's just pantomime, isn't it?
Exactly.
Like, I know it's a pantomime season, but like it's just you love shit like that.
Exactly, because even against Arsenal, he was playing the bollocks, but that's what he's going to do. So you just have to stand there and be like, yeah, fair play. He is not being anything other than himself. No. And I think he's just brilliant. So yeah, Aston Villa did so well. He's also a very, very good goalkeeper. Like, he's also amazing. Like, he can back it up with his performances. So I think, fantastic to see him. Villa still absolutely flying. And I think we're going to move on from that, and we're going to go... I'm going to talk about Arsenal actually winning. Let's do it. Let's go for Brighton had scored in 31 games consecutively before this game. I think they had managed to get one shot, which was a terrible miss from Pascal Gross and definitely let us off the hook. But I think this is one of the most dominant performances I've seen from Arsenal this year. It was just fantastic. I think Martin Ødegaard is starting to get back to form. The pass that he plays through for Bukayo Saka for a chance that Martinelli puts over the bar. That is one of the best passes I've seen in this season. So it's great to see him flying. But I just need to talk about Declan Rice. Every so often I smile and remember he plays for us, and I'm like, I can't believe it. I still cannot believe it. Every game he's just hitting incredible levels, and this is another game where he just ran that midfield against a Brighton team, and De Zerbi said it after the game as well. We used to dominating games. We're used to having the ball. We're used to being able to control the game. We were not able to do it here. And Declan Rice is pretty much the reason. And I think the point swing that we're seeing this year from last year is basically down to him. The fact that we're able to control games and dominate games more is because of him. And I think every day I think about, what if Man City had just bought him? Like, the title race would be done by now. Like, it would be done already. But Adam, I'm going to go to you. Declan Rice, do you love him as much as me? Have you been as impressed by him?
I think I'm starting to appreciate him even more with every game that goes past, because like just the way he kind of covers the whole of midfield.
Mhm.
It's not just one area, it's not one pocket, and it's just not just one attribute of his game, is it? It's the kind of aspects of he'll break up the play, but then decide to go on a run and then pass it on, or assist, or whatever it be. He just seems to dominate in so many different ways. And it's that kind of aspect that we kind of saw him developing at West Ham, but he's just showing it on a grander scale almost at Arsenal. And it's kind of being that final jigsaw piece for Arsenal now, kind of allowing you to kind of look at other areas of the pitch where you need to maybe kind of recitify or maybe make even better, right? And it just feels like at this moment in time, that game kind of personified the little bits that Arteta tried to implement in the summer, and they're starting to flourish now. So you had not just Rice, but you had Kai Havertz coming to his own, Odegaard kind of displaying, as you alluded to, there's the kind of form that we know is there. Across the pitch, though, Gabriel Jesus had a solid performance. The back two in the centre-back position were really good. Zinchenko had a better game. All over the pitch, it was really assured, and I think the kind of best analogy for this game was you out-deserbied Brighton, because Brighton do that to other teams, and you actually did something that they weren't too sure how to respond to that. And there's so many poor performers because they didn't know what to do in those situations. They probably, on the training pitch, there's a classic kind of aspect that I did read on where De Zerbi has moments in training where he goes, this is going to happen in a match, and he plans this out quite articulately. But obviously I suspect they were all in shock. They didn't know what to do at those very moments, and I think it just goes to show that Arteta really did think out how this game was going to play out, and he had the players at the right time, right moments, and they played it out magnificently. So yeah, I suppose it just opens up that opportunity of where do Arsenal need to improve on? And going forward, I suspect it's just having a more prolific striker now. It feels like that's where you just need to get that final person, potentially in January.
No, well, fingers crossed. And I have to say, Ben, I'm going to kind of try to make you speak positively about Arsenal. I apologize. But Kai Havertz, I think he now has more goals, more open play goals this season than Chelsea do, which is just a fantastic stat. He's now on 5 goals this season. It's a bit mad considering September and October were very, very bad months for him, right? November was starting to get a bit better. Well, November, he was our player of the month, which is mental. It is impressive how Arteta has managed to get him used to this role relatively quickly, and he's starting to really flourish in it, right?
Yeah, 100%. It looks like he's kind of almost, it feels as if he's playing in the same position as he was when it was kind of the transfer was first mooted, and it was like he's going to be that number 8, which I think a lot of people were a little bit skeptical of. And obviously, he didn't see anything at the start of the season to suggest that was going to be a success. But it almost feels like Arteta's tweaked it and given him a little bit less responsibility on the ball and a little bit more freedom off it. And I think that's where Havertz kind of thrives. You saw him at Chelsea and by Leverkusen, it's almost those third man runs where he kind of comes into his own, and he's such a presence that if you kind of like, and his movement is so good, that's one of the reasons why Chelsea brought him into the Premier League. And I don't think anyone ever doubted that. It's really tricky. I think he fell victim to like the Harry Maguire thing of just like a few bad, like if you put together a compilation of Havertz's worst bits from this season, it'd look really bad, but that just completely ignores a lot of the good stuff that he also does. I thought he stood out as one of your better players at Aston Villa last week. I thought it took Zinchenko too long, I think, to figure out that Havertz was always making that run in behind, in kind of that left channel for Arsenal. And where I think Villa were vulnerable. And I think there's a good chance of saying that 2 months ago, Havertz probably doesn't have the confidence to. I know that finish didn't quite come off as I think he thought he meant it. I think he tried to dink the keeper, and it's almost ended up going perfectly in the bottom corner. But he probably doesn't have the confidence to try that like a month or so ago, and he's been pivotal for Arsenal in kind of this run of games, and it was much better from Arsenal, like total kind of domination. And I thought that was more like Arsenal of last season, whereas I think Arsenal have almost been a little bit more. Pragmatic's the wrong word, I think, but like it has been scaled back a little bit as you kind of tend to, obviously Pep Guardiola, we've seen it, you have to tinker. It's kind of adapt or die in the Premier League. And that's how Arsenal, if Arsenal are going to win the Premier League this season or next season maybe, or in the next 5 years, it's because Arteta would have had to have changed something. And I think Adam made a really interesting point about Declan Rice. And I think what it's almost done is kind of highlight frailties in the Arsenal squad elsewhere because he's so strong. And I think frailties is quite harsh, but take someone like Gabriel Martinelli, for example, who Arsenal fans absolutely love. And everyone can see it that he's such a quality player for his age as well. But I think people are nitpicking so much over him now because you've seen someone like Rice come in, obviously, in a completely different position and make Arsenal kind of play in this different way. And because of how good he is, he stands out so much on a football pitch, Rice. I was fucking gutted when he went to Arsenal because you just knew. Nobody said anything about the price tag because it was just like, 100 million, cool, that makes sense. Nobody said that Arsenal overpaid for him. But I almost think his quality is kind of making other players not look quite as good as they were last season. But I think I've seen a lot of Arsenal fans being quite critical of Martinelli's finishing, and obviously he had that amazing chance where Odegaard played that unreal pass with the outside of his foot to Saka, who cut it back to Martinelli. And there was, we talked about it on the group chat while the Villa game was happening about Martinelli not quite being decisive or clinical enough in those moments. And be interesting to see. We'd seen Arteta, I mean, this is very harsh, but we've seen Arteta kind of be ruthless in these situations before. And, there's a lot of talk about Arsenal. Do Arsenal need a striker? And is that the way that Arsenal are going to kind of take that next step up? But maybe it's elsewhere rather than that. Maybe it's I don't know. I don't think there's this case to replace Martinelli for by any stretch.
No, I think
more hypercritical. I think of some of these players.
Yeah, I think there's a space for having a backup, having another option. 100%. I think Trossard is the current backup at left wing, but he's not the same type of player as Martinelli. I also prefer Trossard either as a striker or in the number 8. I don't really like him out wide.
Yeah.
But I think there is a conversation to be had about we need another winger so we can rest either Saka or Martinelli. And just as much as I love Reece Nelson because he's a Hale End boy and he's had some great moments, he's still not quite the level that we need.
Yeah. Maybe
Emil Smith-Rowe coming back in and having a few more minutes we could see him be a bit more prominent. But I think a winger is going to be on the list. But I think a striker is a bit more urgent because, again, I love Eddie Nketiah, but he's just not the required level, unfortunately. And if Osimhen's about, I would much rather have him. But we're going to leave Arsenal there for now, I think. Was there anything else I wanted to talk about? No, not really. Oh, Arteta got booked again for nothing. But that seems to happen every single match now. Let's move on to the last game I think we're going to talk about in the Premier League. Was there one more game we want to talk about? Oh, West Ham, very quickly. Paquetá and Kudus. 2 Paquetá assists, 2 Kudus goals. West Ham have got a lot of quality in that team. And when they play well, they play very well. Ben, do you think they just need to be a bit more consistent? Because that was an incredible performance across the pitch. But Paquetá is an absolute baller. He's insane.
Yeah, he's quality. I was quite... I don't know whether it's because some players have kind of come from the French league and flattered to deceive in that kind of position or play that kind of player where... I'm speaking from experience, someone like Ndombele, where you're supposed to get this flair player who's really good and it just doesn't work out. But so Paquetá was one, again, I was a little bit skeptical of, but I think many people were, but I think that kind of bias has got the better of a lot of people because he is brilliant. And I think there's an easy reason to see why Man City have been so keen on trying to get him in. And I think maybe if those kind of revelations didn't come out in the summer about the whole gambling stuff, I think Man City probably would have got that deal done. So it'll be interesting to see whether they go back in for him. But they've added real quality, West Ham. It just kind of feels like at the moment, like you said, I think they're pretty inconsistent. I think the performances haven't quite been there, even in games they've won. But that felt so much better from West Ham yesterday. Wolves have been a bit, they've had that sort of purple patch where even when they weren't getting results necessarily, they were playing really well. But I do think there's been a little drop-off there as well. And I think they kind of took advantage of that because for all 3 goals, I think the second goal and the third goal in particular, it was so incisive from West Ham and really good playing the final third and really kind of, efficient finishing from Kudus and from Bowen. But they were so open, Wolves. It was quite uncharacteristic. It was so they just passed. It was like a knife through butter. It was just felt a bit lackluster from them. But West Ham took full advantage. I think there's just a section of the West Ham fans at the moment, and I'm not sure if you were to get a percentage split. I don't know about how they feel about Moyes, but
Yeah.
it does feel like Moyes has done a brilliant job at West Ham and at basically every other club he's been at. He was obviously the fall guy at Man United. No one's going to come in and be as successful. We saw it with Emery after Wenger, that kind of thing. But he's achieved amazing things with West Ham. But it does feel like there is so much potential that's being sat on there that another manager that could potentially take them to another level.
I think the team might evolve beyond him. I think there's a point where he's built the quality in that squad so much that they eventually need someone who can, like you were just saying, just take them to that next level. Because the friend of the show and one of my best friends, Tom, is a West Ham fan, and he always talks about just how unambitious Moyes can be and how so quick he is to just jump defensively and be like, right, shut up shop. And it's like, no, you need to trust the players you've got a little bit more and try and impose yourself on games more. So I think eventually they will, and maybe it will be the end of the season, they will try and find a manager who can take them that extra step. But Adam, I'm going to go to you. Gary O'Neill, should he feel aggrieved yet again at VAR? Do you feel, I know Wolves were never really in this game, but do you think he was right to feel aggrieved about the Soufal one? Because for me, that's a red, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think he's just cursed. He must just go around the corners and just piss in the corner, I think, just to get this curse off, because it doesn't seem anything's working for him. But yeah, I mean, there's that. Obviously, I felt really sorry for the goal that was chalked off as well. I thought, when we're talking about a player's foot being marginally just bigger than the actual last man, that's where we're just really nitpicking. I know technically VAR's been nitpicking on little things, right? But that is just taking the mick now. And I thought, Cunha really did look exciting. He's a player that I'm starting to appreciate a lot more now. He just single-handedly trying to get Wolves back in the game. It was just scary how good he is. And I would not be surprised if there's a few more suitors for him. But yeah, Wolves were just unlucky on this day. They had an off day. Look, there was some really good performances from West Ham. We've got to say that as well. Kudos, you've got called out as well.
So good.
I mean, I'm just still baffled why there wasn't any bigger teams in for Kudos, because when it was initially linked with Brighton and then he went there to West Ham. I mean, that's incredible. Brilliant bit of business, but it sounds like it's something to do with his agent wanting more money. That's what it ultimately was the reason behind that deal. And I mean, fair play to West Ham. They've shaked off the performance from Fulham and they've moved into this with a win as well. So the one thing I would say on Wolves, Neto looks like he's only a couple of days away from being back in the squad. So that might hopefully spirit them up the table, because he was really critical in terms of being a threat, but also the assist that he was creating was just insane. So
we do. Incredible performance from West Ham, and Wolves. I'm sure they will be fine. But before we move on to the Premier League, we just move on from the Premier League. We just have to very quickly say our thoughts are with Tom Lockyer and his family. We hope he is recovering well. We hope to see him back on the pitch again. Horrible scenes, but see you again soon. Hopefully, Tom. Our thoughts are with you. Let's go on to Serie A. Adam, we're going to start with the late Sunday night kickoff. Inter, they weren't their most impressive, but they got the win. So that's all that matters, right?
Yeah, that's the sign of champions, isn't it? That's what they say. Lazio really did do quite well to begin with in this match, but they kind of, I don't know whether it was just fatigues or just got tired of what they were doing. But it kind of, I was almost justified with the video that I put out about Lazio, where a lot of the issues that we started to see in this match were kind of replicated. Just so strange as well, because I was expecting kind of a really tougher match at home, especially as that's where their record is. They're much better at home as well. And they had the crowd as well. They're booing Acerbi every time he touched the ball. They made it uncomfortable for Inter. They just made sure that they didn't have enough time to kind of spiral or, have any moments. And it was only about 40th minute mark when I think there was the first shot that went off a corner, and then DeMarco tries to get Chanaloglu to kind of do the Scholes-esque kind of corner routine, which would have been amazing to have seen again. But Inter did struggle, but they got themselves, thankfully, with a goal in this match. And, Martinez, ice cold, as you kind of alluded to as well in this one. I mean, the way he takes it past Providence, I thought he was going to miss it. I'd be brutally honest. I thought it was almost touching on. Like, if that was me, I'm definitely missing it.
It's going. Tell you what, you're not finding that ball again. I'm telling you. Yeah.
But he manages to tuck it in quite nicely. And then the second one, just a through ball to Thuram, who just has the ease of just tucking it away as well. So it was brilliant from that point of view. You know, these are the kind of wins that you want, though, sometimes where you don't necessarily play well, but your key men kind of help you out. And this was the thing, even when they had substitutes come on to kind of see out the game, they did their jobs, they did their duties. And Inzaghi must be really pleased going into this period as well, because that's what you needed. Just maintain that pressure, especially given the context of Friday night, Juventus have dropped points. That is a few points buffer now for Inter Milan going into this period. So brilliant. But Sarri, again, I think he's pulling whatever remaining hair he's got at the moment because, I just don't know what he can do with that squad at the moment.
Yeah, I feel like it's not really at his not much of the blame is at his feet at the moment. But I want to talk about Lautaro and Thuram because they're recording huge games, and this is a ground that Inter have struggled at historically the last 3 seasons. I think they've lost away to Lazio. But now Lautaro has scored against Juve, got an assist against Milan, an assist against Napoli, a goal against Lazio, 2 against Fiorentina, 1 against Atalanta, and 1 against Bologna. And Thuram has got an assist against Juve, a goal against Milan, a goal against Roma, a goal against Napoli, a goal against Lazio, a goal and an assist against Fiorentina, and an assist against Bologna. These are 2 players that are consistently turning up in the big games and making the difference. And Lautaro is now 2 goals away from breaking the record for the most goals for an Inter player in a calendar year. So I think we might not see Çalhanoğlu on penalties for a while until Lautaro gets that record, because I think he's going to be hunting it down. But he is just having the season of his life. And as we've said before, our doubt with Lautaro has always been consistency. It's always been, can you do it consistently over games? But he's really doing it this year and hitting new levels. So incredible for Inter. And as Adam said, taking advantage of Juve dropping points. We've been waiting for the day that Juve only scoring 1 goal would bite them in the arse. And it finally came. They couldn't get the job done, but one of their strikers scored. So ultimately, Ben, it's a good day, right? Finally, one of their strikers scored.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the thing is as well, like we've talked about Juventus and Inter obviously a lot in the sense that Inter have been the team that have been playing really well and Juve have been the team that kind of been grinding out results. So from an Inter perspective, they were kind of due that kind of result where they weren't quite convincing, but they got it done. Whereas with Juve, we've always said that it kind of has felt like it's going to catch up with them at some point, and where they are in the table doesn't necessarily reflect the quality that they actually have. It's kind of come back to bite them in the end, really. And I do think that kind of points towards this is obviously probably a 2-team title race, but I just think that with the fact that Juve just, even though they've finally had one of their forwards actually get on the score sheet for the first time in what's felt like a while, it does feel like they just don't quite have that conviction of maybe Inter, who do really look like a top side.
Yeah, well, I think it was the Corriere dello Sport had their front page was a picture of Chiesa, Vlahovic, and then a picture of Gatti, and it was like, why can't you be like Gatti? Basically, it was like you need to be scoring goals like this guy. But Adam, the guy who got the goal for Genoa, Goodmanson, Gilardino doesn't want people talking about him, but it's another goal for him.
No, he's making it hard, isn't he, for Gilardino to make sure the attention isn't on him, because you suspect, given the context of this 7-7 group as well, and the fact that there's not great financial stability with Genoa, I suspect if there's a club that needs a striker, they will target Genoa right now. And another great performance, to be fair. They really did kind of show their worth. I thought actually the second half substitution of Caleb Ekuban, he was really kind of pivotal to why they equalised, because it was his move. He kind of did what Osimhen did against Calgary, where he kind of juggles it up in the air with his head and gets it in the path of Goodmanson, who then tucks away delightfully past Szczesny in the Juventus goal. But just wanted to say on Juventus, they did look horrendously poor on this match. Like, the commentary that was coming out of Juventus fans was just not pleasant. Let's put it that way. They weren't complimentary, and Chiesa was actually the better player for them on the day. If it wasn't for him, I don't think they scored the goal. I think potentially they missed a penalty or something stupid like that. Because Vlahovic doesn't have the confidence right now, and it's one of those that we kind of felt that it was going to come, and surprisingly it happened on the kind of what we speculated, Rory, was maybe they kind of made these Friday fixtures in benefit of themselves, but clearly it's backfired on them. So let's see. Great result for Genoa. Puts them back up because they haven't been on a great run of late.
No, well, that's it. We thought they were looking pretty safe, and they've been slowly sliding down. They've got one win in their last 5, but that's a draw to kind of make it a little bit easier. They're still 4 points clear of the relegation zone, so a big result against Juve definitely won't do any harm. But yeah, good to see Juve dropping points. Always happy about that. But let's move on to a much more interesting game. And one, I really enjoyed this game. It was pretty terrible up until about a 6-minute window, and then it all just kicked off when Osimhen decided he was gonna win the game. An absolutely towering header to take the lead. But then, in typical new Napoli style, they show zero solidity and let Cagliari score almost instantly to level the game. Luvumbo coming off the bench for Cagliari, a player who I've been super excited about. He came on and really changed it for Cagliari, really put a lot of pace and energy into that attack, a bit more incisiveness, and caused Napoli problems across the game. But I'm just holding off on talking about that incredible bit of just magic from Osimhen. Now, there was a clip of him playing in a 5-a-side game in Nigeria, I think it was, like in a season break. And he was doing all this against his mates in 7-a-side, because of course he was just knocking the ball about, juggling about. And loads of the comments on Twitter were like, okay, now do it in Serie A. Well, he's done it in Serie A, and he made those defenders look stupid. I think my favorite bit of it is when the ball does hit the ground, his touch to get past the defender is like the back heel behind him to turn is just genius. Like, Ben, it's not a kind of typical play we see from Osimhen. It's a lot of like power. There is technique, but seeing that level of flair and technique from him, it's really great to see, right?
Yeah, I think you kind of saw the two sides of his game, or maybe one of the sides of the game that not a lot of people thought that were there, in kind of summed up in both of his goals. Both of the goals. The second one he laid on, obviously. The first goal, kind of the brute force and the power with that header, that even though the keeper got a very good hand on it, he still couldn't keep it out. And that's kind of, what you'd maybe consider Osimhen's bread and butter in terms of, if you were to watch a highlight reel, some of the finishes, some of the headers, how good he is in the air, how powerful, how strong, etc. But to show the kind of fleet of foot and the grace in the penalty area when he had 3 or 4 defenders around him to do that. And like you said, my favourite bit was exactly the same, where the juggling is impressive, but when he brings it down and manages to drag it back through his legs, what made me laugh about it as well was the fact that almost like Kvaratskhelia did his best to miss it.
He tried really hard to miss it. He tried really hard.
Yeah, it's like absolutely smacks it against the post. He looked so relieved when that went in, because could you imagine if that didn't result in a goal at the end? Because that is almost like Puskas worthy from Osimhen. And I think, like you said, kind of highlighted a side of his game that not many people maybe thought was there. But it was an amazing goal. And obviously he's had a bit of a kind of tumultuous season. Napoli have kind of had a bit of a tumultuous season, but he's back now. And to do that is just like, I mean, as if he wasn't on every club who's got a little bit of money's radar going into January in the summer. That's only just going to, watching that, that's just going to add however much money on the value. But
that's an extra 20 million in it for De Laurentiis. He's got. Thank you very much.
Yeah, exactly. He'll be rubbing his hands together with that one. But he was excellent. And like you said, they kind of did their best to try and throw it away, and he was determined not to do that and dragged them over the line. But it was incredible from us.
Unbelievable moment. I wanted to talk, Adam, about Mario Rui. He came off the bench, and I think he made a real difference. Like, I like Nathan. I think he's made a pretty good start to life in Serie A. He still looks a little bit dodgy at times, but I think you could see when Mario Rui came on, instantly they had much more incisiveness down that left wing, much more pace, much more danger. It's good to. It was just nice to see him back on the pitch doing things, because I feel like it's been a while, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think obviously Natan is still an experiment, which I don't think is going to come off personally.
Yeah.
As much as he's got the pace to kind of play that kind of left hand side, he's not really what I would kind of classify as a left back.
No.
Mari Rui can do it. Obviously, we know he's experienced in that position. He did so really well. I think he grew last season under Spalletti, and he owned that left hand side. And it was great to kind of see him kind of come from that left-hand side deep with a cross for that initial goal for Osimhen. I mean, that was the Rui that we know of. And yeah, I mean, let's see more of it. I wonder if Mazzari will start having a rethink about whether Mari Rui has a future at the club. Because I think up until that point, Mari Rui was probably contemplating his life outside of Napoli after this kind of January window. I think he was contemplating moving on. But we'll wait and see. I think that obviously gives an opportunity for Mazzari to maybe reassess who he's got now. And Natan should always be a centre-back because, no offence, but Juan Jesus is not the option at centre-back.
He can't be long-term. He cannot be long-term. I'm really enjoying the fact that Anguissa seems to have a much more advanced role under Mazzani. I feel like he's pushing up much further than we ever saw him last year. Like, he was incredible last year for Napoli, right? But he was very much that metronome, holding play, getting the second balls, kind of much more conservative. We've really seen him on the edge of the box now with like quick 1-2s, trying to get balls into, like, trying to get assists, getting the odd shot. I'm really enjoying him in a much more advanced role. I think he had a really good game as well. So it was good to see that. But Adam, last question: it is a concern for Napoli that Cagliari were able to just run straight through and score after they scored, right?
Yeah.
They still don't have that defensive stability. They have to get a goalkeeper. I know this goal wasn't Meret's fault, but I feel like it all kind of stems from not having a completely solid goalkeeper.
I think it kind of highlights how big a miss Min-jae is. You know, when they sold him to Bayern, they didn't really replace him, and that was always going to be difficult. But to kind of rely on a promising kind of centre back like Natan and expect him to kind of fill the void was, typical De Laurentiis cheaping out, really, essentially. And unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be addressed in this window. But yeah, it is a concern in terms of the way they're playing. And if they want to be in the top four, they need to address it as soon as possible. But I don't know. I don't get your thoughts on this. Mazzari doesn't kind of strike out as a person that really tackles the defensive issues. He's much more of an attacking-minded player or manager, should I say.
Yeah, I don't think he really cares about the defensive side of the game.
Exactly.
He's very much more just, let's try and score and see what happens. I think, but obviously they do have injuries in defense at the minute as well, and it is kind of patched together. But yeah, I found it really, really worrying that there was just that lapse of concentration as well. A lot of it is concentration and just allowing Cagliari to run straight through. But I think we do have to give Cagliari a bit of credit. They kept the game tight. They kept it like they were in the game the entire time because Napoli definitely dominated. But Ranieri sets them up very, very, 4-4-2. It is pretty sturdy and pretty sensible. Them coming back with two ex-Napoli strikers as a strike force in Petagna and Pavoletti was particularly enjoyable. Of course, Pavoletti got his goal. He also tried, as he does every game, his customary bicycle kick. This one didn't quite come off. I think he nearly killed someone as he did it. But he did get his goal. Petagna he's either he's always terrible, but sometimes he has headline performances. This definitely wasn't one of them. He was incredibly ineffective. But I think there was enough there that shows that Cagliari do have enough quality. They just need to start getting the points, because I think they're never really getting battered. They're always in games, and I think Ranieri's managing to do that. And again, Lovumbo coming off the bench just made a huge difference. I think he's a really, really exciting player. And he was great for them when he came on. But let's leave Napoli there, I think. And we're going to talk about, what was the other game, Adam? My mind's... Oh, Bologna. Bologna for the Champions League. Now, for every 10 predictions we get wrong, we might get one right. And at the moment, my Bologna prediction's looking quite good. A 2-0 win against Roma, a pretty dominant performance. Adam, how impressed were you with Bologna? I love the style of football they're playing.
I love it because they also changed personnel in this match as well, especially when you look at it. So Ravaglia, I think is how you pronounce it, in goal, replacing Skorupski and Moro. as well.
It completely fucked my Fantacalcio, by the way. Sorry. I've got Skorupski in goal. I was like, who the hell's this guy? Why the hell's he playing? Anyway, Adam, continue.
But yeah, that initial goal by Bologna was such a fantastic move because it was such a team goal. Beckham at the back, kind of passing it out. And it was, I think I want to say it was within 5 passes. It went from one end of the pitch to the other and it turned into a goal. It was such a spectacular kind of take as well. But yeah, it kind of highlighted how poor Roma were as well in this match. And Bologna with Thiago Motta, who obviously played under Jose in that infamous Inter squad that won the treble as well. Just crazy. But there's so many highlighted players here for this match. Xerxes as well, showing what an incredible talent he's going to become. And Ndoye as well. I was really impressed by Ndoye's kind of running in this particular match. He kind of could have nicked it even more for Bologna towards the end of the match. He could have made it at least 3-0. But yeah, the other talking point in this match, Rory, was about Roma and the fact that Mourinho brought on Renato Sanchez and then 20 minutes later takes him off. And you just see a clip of Renato Sanchez saying, "Me? You want me to come off?"
Well, I'm gonna go to someone who's had to live under Jose Mourinho and who had to put up with his antics. How did you feel about seeing that? Were you surprised? I feel bad for Renato Sanchez. I feel like managers just bully him a little bit. What do you think of it?
He's never been able to really establish himself anywhere, has he? And it just feels, I feel bad for him, and it almost feels like I still kind of picture him as almost like an 18-year-old, 19-year-old breaking through, where he's not that anymore. But just I still kind of look at him and think he had such a forlorn, sad look on his face when he got taken off, and it was just I don't know whether there's kind of been any explanation from Jose around it. He tends to skirt around these things and say, "Well, I'm the manager; I can kind of do what I want." And he's done it. He did it at Tottenham. Slightly different circumstances in the sense that he started Eric Dyer and then within 20 minutes of a Champions League game brought him off when we went 1-0 down, and it just felt like that was also one of Mourinho's first, I think it was his first home game as well as a Tottenham manager, and it just felt like, bear in mind, Dyer at the time was someone that he kind of had put big stocks into in the sense that he wanted him at Man United, and it was just no one could really get their head around what he was doing. So he's got form for this kind of stuff. But it's just, I mean, Roma is such a weird one. Those 2 goals from Bologna were so well worked, but they just carved through Roma so easily on both occasions, from kind of in the centre, out wide, back across the goal, and there was someone to run onto it on both occasions, and it just feels like they're a bit so up. Roma, Mourinho's kind of sides ever since he had that golden period at Chelsea and then went back there and won the league. He's never really been able to establish any level of consistency anywhere he's been, whether that's Man United or Tottenham. And his sides have kind of been typically up and down since he had that real honeymoon period. And he is one of the greatest managers ever. We can't dispute that. But at what point do you kind of have to say that it's not worked out really? Obviously, he brought success back to Roma with the European trophy, but it just feels like, I don't feel like there's, obviously, when you've got teams like Bologna kind of moving ahead of you in that race for top 4 under a young coach in comparison to Mourinho and Motta, it feels like Mourinho's maybe being left behind a bit. And again, he had another little swipe at Tottenham today, talking about how I've never, the only club to sack me on the eve of a cup final, and they've won no trophies and all this kind of stuff. It's just I'm just quite proud of how rent-free we live in his head, and I feel like
he's still angry about it.
Yeah,
he's still angry.
We were the club that broke him, so we can come to that aspect.
Ultimately, you've done a favour for football, maybe.
Exactly. Yeah, we'll take the moral high ground in this one. You're welcome, everybody else. But his kind of management of his man management at Tottenham was terrible of certain players. You kind of seen that again here at Roma. There's so much quality in that Roma team, and it just feels like, again, it felt like at Tottenham where we had points under him where maybe in the second half of the season in COVID where it wasn't him getting the best out of the players, it was the players bailing him out of certain scenarios. And I think Gareth Bale was definitely a player like that, where it's you can rely on, when you've got players like Dybala, and less so Lukaku, but Dybala is one of those players that who will produce in moments when you need him to, but you're not going to be able to have someone like him to bail you out every single week. And that was kind of a similar thing that was happening with Bale towards the end of Mourinho's time at Spurs. And it does feel like he almost, like, had it at Man United as well, like with Ibrahimovic in that first season. He's always just had, like, ever since that real period of success for him, he's just been able to, like, rely on a couple of players that have got him out of jail big time, and that's never going to get you anywhere as a club. Like, so yeah, I'm kind of reveling in his kind of misery at the moment, which is fantastic. But it's kind of a shame to see Roma, because Roma are always a team that I've really liked, and
it's
just
difficult
feels like they shouldn't be in the situation they are. Yeah.
It's difficult to watch Roma, honestly, because you never know what's going to happen. You can't ever expect anything. Like, you just got to be like, let's just see where this goes, because you never know what's going to happen. But I wanted to finish on Bologna, because I feel like the style of football they're playing, and I'm fascinated by just the amount of runs into the box. It's all vertical passing, and it's all super quick breaks. And like you said, with the goals against Roma looked disorganized. They were disorganized, but they also looked disorganized, because the second Bologna press and they win the ball back, it's just like fighter jets. Everyone's running through. So when the ball comes across, you've got 3 options, you've got 4 options. And if the ball does get lost, there's someone else chasing it up. I think the style of football they're playing is fantastic. Super, like, nice short passing, quick, intense, and like defensively pretty solid. Like you said, Adam, you called him out. Like Bukeme, he's come into the league. Incredible scouting from them. He's come in and just looked completely at home in the Serie A. Like, I always think, like, because Bologna aren't really a team here that people are talking. They've only just started talking about them now. And he's a player that slowly people are talking about.
Yeah.
And usually when a player comes into the league, they're either talked about because they've been crap, or they've been amazing, or they've not been noticed. And I think he's just fitted in perfectly and just looks so comfortable. It's incredible to see. And Adam, a nice, exciting Polish player coming off the bench, Kasper Urbanski.
Did he come off?
He came on. Yeah, he came on late on.
He did.
Another young player that they've kind of started to blood in, 19 years old.
Yeah, that's nice for him to come on. I wasn't expecting him to necessarily play, to be fair. But yeah, no, I must have missed that, because I was just seeing the whole result itself in its entirety rather than him coming on. But yeah, I mean, I haven't seen much of him, to be brutally honest, in the under 20s or under 21 level. But we have got a few of these polls kind of dotted around Italian clubs at the moment, because obviously Italy kind of targets Poland for being kind of a cheap market for them, and it gives them a platform, right, as well. Yeah, let's see if he kind of builds himself up, especially with a great tutor like Motta. I mean,
well, this is it, exactly, and their scouting at the moment is pretty much hit at the moment. Like, they've got the old sporting director from Atalanta, which is a big reason why this ship's going this way. And I am kind of thinking now, in the table, they are currently on 28 points in fourth place. Now, all the way down to 9th, Torino are only 5 points behind. So it's very, very tight down there, or up there. But Bologna are giving themselves a massive chance. 7 wins, 7 draws, 2 losses, only 12 goals conceded. Like, it is a very, very impressive season. So hopefully we'll see them at least get Europa League. If they got into the Champions League, that would genuinely be monumental, because this is not like Bologna are not a historically big team, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So it'd be great for Motta to do it. So fingers crossed for that one. And before we finish, we very, very quickly need to say Milan are kind of looking. Now, we know it won't last long, and we know it'll all fall apart spectacularly, but we do have to give them credit for beating Monza 3-0. This is a game that I thought would be much tougher than it was. Monza definitely had an off day. Reinders getting on the score sheet. Simic, a young player, getting on the score, young centre-back. And Noah Okafor, if he gets more minutes, he will score goals, I'm convinced. And he is starting to get a little bit more clinical. So great to see that for Milan. And Adam, you very quickly wanted to talk about Fiorentina.
Yeah, because Fiorentina have been absolutely shocking. Andrea probably is reveling in that, because they are finding themselves in 5th place right now. And they're doing quite well from a point of view. They're up there in the mix, so to speak. Sorry, I got them 5th. It's actually 6th place. But they're level on points with Napoli as it currently stands, and 1 point off Bologna. So doing quite well from that point of view. But the performances was pretty shocking against this Hellas Verona side, who had 19 shots compared to their 3 on target. So that kind of shows you how bad Fiorentina. And Fiorentina gave away a penalty, and Torrigiano did save it. So yeah, it's typical Fiorentina, I'd say. They're just playing really poorly. Maybe they got tips off David Moyes in that final. Maybe that's what it was. But just play shit and then you get results, right? But yeah, that's Italiano. I think there's a lot of discontent about his style of football at the moment. So yeah,
his stock is falling very quickly. I think people are getting less and less excited about him at the moment, which is a shame because his name was very, very hot as of 6 months ago, but it's not quite going as we hoped at Fiorentina. But guys, the last thing we're going to talk about very quickly, the Champions League draw was made today, the last 16. Let's take you through it. Copenhagen against Man City. Of course, Man City got the easy draw. Why would they ever get a difficult draw? RB Leipzig against Real Madrid. PSG, Real Sociedad. Lazio, Bayern in a lovely 1940s derby there. PSV taking on Dortmund. Inter, Atletico Madrid. Porto, Arsenal. And Napoli, Barcelona. Ben, I'm going to go to you with 2 questions. Tie you are most looking forward to, and the tie that you think will be an upset.
The tie that I'm most looking forward to, I think, is probably Leipzig Real Madrid, because I've been really impressed with Leipzig this season. You've got 2 of the best kind of young talents in the world, in Xavi Simons and Jude Bellingham, kind of going up against each other. I don't necessarily think that could be an upset, but I do think, especially the first leg as well, was in Germany.
Yeah.
Obviously, Leipzig kind of made it quite difficult for Man City away from home as well. Apenda's on fire at the moment. Xavi Simons is just going from strength to strength. And obviously, Madrid, it'll be interesting to see where they kind of dip into the market in January, because obviously they've lost Alaba as well now to an ACL injury, and they've kind of had very bad luck in that aspect. So I'm looking forward to that one. Tie, I think, could be an upset. As much as I want to say Porto Arsenal, I don't know. I think, you know what? I think I'd say it as an upset as well. I think Sociedad will give PSG a really good game. I don't think that's a foregone conclusion. Definitely.
Yeah.
As many people would think. It's like, oh, Man City got the easy draw, PSG will get through, blah, blah, blah. Like, I think that could be one to definitely keep an eye on. I think Inter Atletico is a good tie to keep an eye on as well. But I think I'm going to say Leipzig to go through against Real Madrid.
Nice.
I'm going to say that's my upset as well.
I like that. My upset was going to be Sociedad against PSG as well, because I think Sociedad have got the best defense in the tournament so far. They've only conceded 2 goals, I think, and we saw against Dortmund and against Newcastle, PSG cannot finish. So I feel like Sociedad could get a bit of a result there. Adam, game you're looking forward to and upset?
I'm going to go with Inter Atletico as the game to watch out for, because I think, that's generally going to be the one to look out for. And the one I'm going to stick my head online and say might be the kind of underdog that gets through, PSV versus Bayern Munich, or Borussia Dortmund even, sorry. Okay. Because I know Borussia Dortmund of late have displayed really well in that kind of Champions League match, or group stage, should I say. But PSV, I feel like on their day, over 2 legs, they could do it.
Let's see. I'm going to just give a shout out and roll one game into both. I'm going to say Napoli-Barcelona is going to be a very, very interesting tie. I know it's Mazzarri's Napoli, but I feel like Napoli could really cause Barcelona in all sorts of chaos. It looks like Xavi's nearly on his way out. I think Napoli could really take advantage there, and I think Napoli could get through. I don't know if it would actually count as an upset, but I think it would be an upset if Napoli knocked out Barcelona. So I'm going to say that's the tie to look out for, and that will be the upset. But yeah, exciting times. Last 16, Arsenal in the last 16. I dreamed of days like this. It's been a long time. Jesus. Good. Well, guys, we are finished for today. There is some midweek action in the Carabao Cup and the Coppa Italia. On Friday, we will come back to you with a recap of all that, and it will be our last show of the year, signing off 2023 in style. We'll be talking about our favorite moments in 2023. Looking forward to the January transfer window, because it's only a week away, 2 weeks away. It flies. Time flies, eh? So we will see you on Friday. Ben, as always, thanks for coming on. When our viewers want to find you, where can they find your stuff online?
You can find me. Thanks for having me on as always, as well. You can find me, Ben Talks Football, on TikTok and on Twitter as well. If you search that, it will come up. So yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. I'm looking forward to coming back in the new year.
Beautiful. Yeah, of course, man. Yeah, have a good Christmas. Have a good New Year.
You too.
Crazy stuff. So guys, as always, hit like and subscribe down here. You can find us on TikTok and Instagram at Anglo-Italian Pod, on Twitter at Italian Anglo Pod. And yeah, Adam, anything to say before we go?
Buon Natale, or Antonio Di Natale.
Tony Christmas. Tony
Yes.
Christmas. Love it. Guys, thank you very much. We will see you on Friday. Ciao. Arrivederci.
Ciao.